question. One more question. One more question. Yep. Okay.
Beautiful day, getting the sun out.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, no problem. That's what I'm here for. I'm doing this on the side.
Right.
Between people, yeah.
The markings on the stones, like the white.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that made of? What is that?
Well, it's just a white paint, just to outline
okay,
man-made cutouts and carvings. Some of them are these little basins with a little runoff, and it's shaped like a baby chick. There's one like an apple, one like a kidney. There's another one shaped like a wine bottle.
Right.
And this
so
one
the
is just kind of
U's and V's or
yeah, there's some V's.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the U's are the drill marks, the plug and feather that the quarrymen were up here when they were stripping the site up back in the 1800s, around Paddy time, and they were drilling. They put these every so many inches.
Mm-hmm.
They put feathered guides, and they're made out of metal with a plug. And actually, one of the kits was left behind by them, and it's on display in there, the plug and feather kit.
Yep.
And they would hit it with a maul, and it would split it like wood almost. You know.
Oh, okay.
That's modern technology of splitting. Also, the V kind of goes back even to the time of the V, or kind of sort of U shape. Go back to even the Egyptian time period. And they might put wood in there, and they let it swell and crack the rock.
Right.
Or more modern times, I think they use a tool called a bolster tool, although I haven't seen one, but it's supposed to have like a pointed end on it. And you get a couple of these and you pry and help sort of, although it seems like that, unless they drove it, it seems like you need a tremendous amount of force to break something like that. It'd have to be a very strong tool.
Do you think the whole structure is like, that was the foundation and there was something on top of it?
Oh, like a superstructure? I mean, possibly wood, but that wouldn't, because you wouldn't really have any evidence of the wood today, but it's possible that they had wooden superstructures, but most of it has stone roofs, and there are areas like the plaza area, and there's like a courtyard area that could be kind of covered over with wood at one time. I bet you they did use some wood up there, possibly, but I mean, it's just we don't know, we can't prove it really, you know?
Right.
So it's just, everybody asks the same question, and maybe just because it strikes everybody, like maybe there's some wood.
Yeah.
Paddy's put a wooden house above that, what was a courtyard, turning that into a foundation with a center wall there, letter C. And using that like the lolly columns today, the metal poles that help support your house. But he used a wall, and he blocked off the stone staircase. Only one step is showing today. There's 4 more steps down, and they were evident. If you've been here when I came here in 1970, when I was small as a guide, you could still walk down, and it didn't go anywhere. It's like, what, So obviously that was a staircase to enter that area, and somebody later on blocked it off, probably the Paddies. And then they built a house over there, and it was 40 feet by 20 feet approximately. By possibly 2 stories high. We think the house is the one when you go to our driveway. If you take a left, it's the first white house on the right. And in the 1900s, 1907, the book of History of Salem was put out, and in its picture from the late 1800s of the Paddies standing down there at that house. We think they recycled the wood from this house, moved it down here. Farming was better down here, and they moved it, recycled it. And that road, in front of that house, is actually a road that goes right up to the site. So they could have had access to bring the boards down.
Right down.
Yeah. I don't know if they would have taken it apart like. I don't know if they would have just taken the walls apart and carried the walls down. I'm not sure how they would have dismantled it, but they might have. But the house down there would fit on that foundation up there.
Right.
And there was some, I guess, rumors that the house ended up down here somehow. It partially burned, and at that point, they decided to remove the whole thing from there and bring it down. There's not enough ashes up there to indicate that the whole thing was consumed, charcoal and stuff.
Yeah.
But there was pieces of a stove down in the cellar. There were two fireplaces that were there. So some of it was damaged by fire, but those little white things, when we saw those little basins, I was in Malta and I asked the guide over there what they were, and they said they were for religious offerings. They pour fluid into them, and it's an offering for fertility. It could be blood, it could be something else they poured into that. It was an offering to the gods so that crops would come up. And Frank Glenn, president of the Connecticut Archaeological Society in the 50s and 60s, he died in 1968. He saw like 20, almost 24 similarities between our site and what Malta had. So we visited Malta, I think, in 1997, and some of the oldest megalithic ruins in the world in the 4 islands there of Malta, and right below Sicily. And the Phoenicians were there later. But the megalithic builders did quite a job there.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, that the coin that you guys found here was Phoenician?
Phoenician, yeah. It was actually found in Newburyport, Mass, right at the ocean, where the water comes out into the ocean.
Wow.
And that would be the entrance that, isn't that cool? I mean, we always thought, well, if they were people coming from overseas, Phoenicians or whoever, then they would have come up to Merrimack, and then to find this coin a couple of years ago, it's like, Well, that almost makes sense.
it
Yeah,
does.
it
Yeah,
doesn't
it
totally
fits.
prove it, but boy, like you say, it adds to the whole
Right, adds to the
piece
puzzle.
Puzzle, and it's a piece of evidence possibly helping to support it. Like it was a court of law. Here's another little piece of the evidence.
Yep.
But that coin over there, the Carthaginian coin, that just shows the map of looks like the Atlantic kind of.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And then to find the Beothuks up in Newfoundland had some blue eyes, green eyes, and they were light skinned. And I'm not sure if it was Cabot that saw them, but there were others that saw them. And around 1820, later in time, they had died out. They had been in some wars with some local people, and but this group of Native Americans had some European characteristics to their features and skin.
They were lighter.
Narragansett, the Beothuks,
Right.
the Mandan Indians out west too, and Lewis and Clark went out to look for that Northwest Passage for Jefferson. One of the things they were supposed to look at is all the wildlife and human activity out there. Go see if there's dinosaurs out there. I don't know.
Right.
Find everything you can. Find that passageway. One of the things they were looking at in the Mandans, there was legends of these Welsh Indians. That the Indians could speak Welsh. So they did find them, and they did say some of them had the blue eyes, some had the green eyes, and some of their traditions seemed to be the Old Testament with Moses coming off the mountain, with the Ten Commandments, that kind of thing. They did a reenactment of that, and it seemed like it was like a Christian kind of thing in it.
Have you heard about the pyramids and the stone structures of faces that they found recently in the Bermuda Triangle, like that area?
I know. I'm familiar with the Bermuda Triangle, but not the faces.
They found some. They said they found pyramids under the water that are like 3 times the size of the ones in Egypt.
Have they got anything to prove that now? Photographs?
I didn't. I mean, I saw the photographs. I don't know if they're true or I don't know, but that might be something. Yeah, huge. Yeah.
And because the oceans were lower 400 feet. If you go back during the last glacial period, and then they've been slowly rising ever since.
Yeah.
And we were covered by about a mile of ice here, and this land was pushed down somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 mile.
Right.
And we still have earthquakes because it's rebounding. We've talked a lot about the eustatic and retrostatic. Once the ice left, the pressure off the ground, the land came up, and then the waters rose, and then and you heat up water, it expands too, and you add water, it rises too. So you got both things going on. And sometimes the shoreline came up as close as Kingston, New Hampshire, and that's only about 15 miles from here.
Right.
And that's inland maybe, as a crow flies, it's probably the water came in like, I don't know, maybe almost 10 miles further than it is today.
Yeah.
And there was a seashore there, not too far from here. But you'd have to go back towards, I think somewhere around 10 or 12,000 years ago, possibly. Maybe a little bit more than that. But the last glacial maximum, they say, was 19,000 years ago to 18,000.
So I was thinking maybe that's what happened to Atlantis.
The
waters rose and it's underneath the water now.
Yeah, like Troy existed, and people thought it was just a fable,
a myth. Yeah.
And Heinrich Schliemann, and then Arthur Evans found kenosis, or at least he found a lot about kenosis, and then there's other people like Stevens, I think, down in, where was he, down in where the heck was Stevens now? He was down in Mexico, or was he in South America? Stevens, I think, was in Mexico. But a lot of these ancient legends of these places, like the City of Z, I just read that book, it's really cool, about ancient ruins in the Amazon River where the jungle is, and they said, well, you couldn't have any civilization here because there's not enough to support it. The ground doesn't support the nutrients to grow crops for a civilization to advance, and then you get all the things with mosquitoes and a lot of pests, a lot of things in the wildlife down there. And yet there was these legends that went on and on about when the first Spanish got down there, they reported seeing these vast cities down there where there's nothing today but jungle. And so these legends went on as, then one of those legends again, roll the eyes and everything. Well, they have been finding now, I guess with all the modern satellite, everything, and these guys found all these things that were causeways, mounds of earth, huge, huge mounds that were built purposefully so you could grow crops and also so you can build your houses on top. Okay. They dug canals, and these things were buried by the jungle because I think some of the smallpox got out, and it caused the Indian to die. And they think there were 100 million Native Americans at the time of Columbus, possibly. So it's a sizable population. It's still being debated in a little political times too. But in any event, there were people here and they died. But what happens is smallpox wiped them out, and all of a sudden then the land just became covered with a jungle again, and it buried and it became fables like, that's the City of Z. That's from down there, And even all the experts said, but nobody could ever survive and build a big population down there. They just wouldn't support it. Right. And the other finding they actually modified the land to make and they had these big cities with these gigantic homes and everything, and they painted them white.
Yeah.
And because they're talking about the city of Z having these white buildings and everything, the Spanish reported in their chronicles. You know,
Right.
they're making this stuff up. They want to bring more people over here or something.
Didn't Cortez say something about when he came back, all the Indians were gone? Like he was it the Aztecs or the Mayans? I forget. When he came back, they were gone. Like
They weren't a problem for the Spanish in their
Yeah.
minds anymore. Like, yeah, they're wiped out by the
That's-
smallpox.
it was the smallpox that did it,
There was hepatitis B too, I think, that killed off a lot
Right.
of them too.
Yeah.
So some of these cities, like you say, like Atlantis, maybe it's based on something that really existed, you know, and it just carried through mankind's memory and conscious, like, and it became more of like a fable eventually. And people, you know, they change the story a little bit, or they add to it and make it really. And maybe it was an advanced. Like the Minoans were pretty advanced too, you know, the Minoans, and then that was it Mount Thera, Etna blew up. Thera, I think it was called Etna. Was it Etna? It was the one that blew up, and it caused a tsunami. Because we saw the guy from Channel Nova, you know, the Nova
Yep,
show?
yep, Nova,
The
yep.
senior science editor, Evan Haddingham, was giving a lecture at the NERA meeting up in Concord, New Hampshire. Years ago, these people weren't even looking at NERA. They thought they were a crackpot outfit. Now, the head of the Smithsonian, Dennis Stafford's been to the meetings a couple of times. Betty Megas from the Smithsonian, and Ted Timmerick, and others have been to them. But he was one from Nova. He's a senior science editor. And his name's always on the Nova at the end of it there. But anyway, he was up there talking about that, and he said, well, the winds at the time, I think, would have brought all the fallout towards Turkey when that blew up.
Right.
But it was a tsunami wave that came in, and it devastated Knossos, it devastated the island of Crete, basically, and they were never able to really recover. And I think the Greek Mycenaean came in later on. They weren't quite as advanced.
Mm-hmm.
The Minoans, I mean, they had flushing toilets, they had hot water or cold water, they had beautiful artwork, beautiful paintings. The architecture was incredible, you know,
Right.
when they dig the stuff up. And Arthur Evans dug it up, and people just didn't realize how advanced these people
Yeah.
were, you know. Again, it was one of those legends in mankind's mind,
Right.
passed on, and since the evidence was covered, people thought, well, maybe it's just fantasy. You know,
Right, yeah.
It's,
they were actually more advanced than we think. Yeah.
we went through little dark ages at times,
Right,
you know, up
right.
and down, I think. I keep thinking the Egyptians were so advanced, and I go back to like the 1620s with Plymouth, and we just were down there for Thanksgiving last year. I've been there many times. It's like, geez, it seems so backwards. I mean, in a way, you know, these crude shelters they lived in, and you think of the Egyptians thousands of years before
Right, and what
buildings,
they had,
marvelous.
yeah.
So it's like so
So
funny.
something must have wiped out, you know, the flood, the great flood that the Bible talks about. You know,
Yeah.
it makes sense to me.
Well, they said the Mediterranean was more like a great big valley with a river going through it, and when the Ice Age ended, or when it was going, the oceans were rising, and it actually flooded that whole Mediterranean valley. And they think the Osirian cult, which preceded the Egyptian, you know,
Yeah.
dynasties and everything, may have been flooded and, you know, partially destroyed. And the Black Sea also was another one that may have been flooded too.
Yeah, flooded the outside,
That's where
yeah.
the Phoenician ships are found out in the Black Sea too.
Oh,
you
okay,
know?
yeah. Wow. Okay. Oh, you found
one's
those?
for you.
Oh, that's pretty. All right.
Yeah, you can take them home with you.
All right.
Now, if you watch TV, you probably do, or
Yep.
the computer. They'll be on PBS, like I mentioned, Channel 2 and Channel whatever it is in Springfield, but it will probably be sold to other New England, you know, New England, Rhode Island, so I don't know if you quite get PBH Channel 2 down
Yeah,
there.
we do. Yep.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
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 They'll be in October, New England Legends, and then it's supposed to go on to Investigative Discovery, which is Discovery Channel's ID there, ID they call it, TV. It will be on that. I think it's Portals to the Unknown will be on that. That was from like 2 years ago, actually, by a
Oh,
Canadian
okay.
company, and it hasn't aired yet. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be on this fall. And then the movie will be out next year as American Templar. And one of his books
the
is
one.
left there. I saw the other books are. I think we got to call Dave up again and get some more books.
Yeah,
so he
that's
came.
what you're telling me
He
about,
was
yeah.
filming here, 2 months ago, and he brought in a whole bunch of them. They do sell, and he has I say 6 books out. I think a 7th book is going to be put out too. But he's been so busy getting the movie,
Right.
and they're out in New York City, and they had like 25 people up here shooting for a couple days, and they had to go off to I think Newport. They had to go off to a couple other places that
Yeah.
are in the book.
The,
you know?
the tower.
The tower,
They
yeah,
went
and
to
they
the
went. I don't know if they
tower,
went to Maine or not. Some of it they had to recreate because they didn't want to travel up to Nova Scotia to do some foot
Right.
shooting, and then I guess it gets expensive too. When international, and some places charge a lot for shooting films and stuff. But for us, it was kind of cool. And we got a little cameo role walking through the parking lot as just as tourists. So we had a sign on that. We had a sign to let him come up here and shoot for a few days. I was gonna. Oh, and Dave, what's his name? Scott Walter's TV show, American Earth, will have 13 new episodes starting this fall.
Okay.
I believe it's going to be in this fall. He's already shooting. I got a couple of text messages from him. He's busy. He'll see a site over here, and they'll explain it, and then they may have to go over to Europe to compare it like they did with this site with Stonehenge. They had to travel across the ocean. So he's out of Minneapolis, and his company's went actually the American Petrographics, and they were the ones, I don't know if you watched the whole show, but they can look at stones with different types of microscopes, scanning electron microscopes, and I think 3D microscopes, some other equipment. They can look and see the rate of deterioration in the rock. And if the rock was broke open 100 years ago, they can tell kind of a rough period. If it was open thousands of years ago, and you know it was a man-made, like one of these big slabs up there, and that's what we have to have done here. If the technology advances to where people accept it, archaeologists. Table came off the bedrock, the big slabs came off the bedrock. You take a piece of that, you examine it, and you can say, well, you know, it looks like the rate of deterioration. It's been a few thousand years. The stone was broken up by man. That helps to support our old date.
Yep.
And the carvings too, like the Kensington Runestone, which is in the book too. But I don't. And they did that one because he lives in Minnesota, so they went out and filmed that. The Kensington.
Close, yeah.
But in that, not only the rate of, was somebody had scratched it with a nail, but at the bottom, I think it wasn't. Was the bottom or the sides had weathering? The bottom was somebody had re-scratched it, so it really showed up. This is done, 100 years ago. Somebody's scratching it so you could take photographs of it,
Right.
and it ruined evidence with the technology we have today that they didn't have back then. It had the dotted R and the hooked X, which was found, like I mentioned, up at Spirit down there.
Yeah, is that? I saw a marking in one of the stones over there. Someone wrote 1980 something.
Oh, Dave Stewart Smith did that. Yeah, he's had stonemason on the video. I don't know if you watched the video inside.
Yep, we did.
He's coming back this fall, and he's a master stonemason. He spends a lot of time in Scotland too, but he's a professor. He's a doctor of theology and historical anthropology, and New Hampshire Humanities Council, and he's a master stonemason. And he's done a lot of restoration work up there since 1980. He's going to do a May 1st stone, one of the big ones up there. It's about 10 feet long. It's fallen over, and it's a beautiful stone. It's triangular shaped, and we're going to see if there was a socket. They'll have to lay out the grid work, excavate, see what they can find for information and data.
What was the symbol that was on there?
The stonemason mark. Yeah,
Oh,
he's
okay,
Master
all right.
Master Man. Yeah, I think he's a 33rd degree Scottish Rite. I think.
Right.
I think he is. Yeah, he's a master stonemason. So
Yeah.
I think that's. But there is a grand mason, so I think that's the highest.
Right, and when I went to that cemetery in Newport, there was a stone that said the first Grand Mason of, I want to say, in America.
Oh, yeah, that might be. Yeah,
I
that
can't
sounds
remember the
vaguely
date.
familiar.
I can't remember the date of that, but
That sounds vaguely familiar.
yeah, we actually did
Rubbing.
a grave
Yeah.
rubbing of that.
Yeah. That's kind of cool, yeah, because the Masons have been here. Washington, and I think a lot of them were. Yeah.
And there's a library in Newport where I guess the British, when they came over, they took over this library, the Redwood Library
is that
in
right?
Newport, and it's right down the road from the other structure we're talking about there, the tower.
Newport Tower,
Yeah, and I guess a lot of the Grand Masons that's where they would do their have their meetings over there in this library.
That's kind of cool. So right down the street from that.
Right down the road, yeah.
Because Dave's books does have stuff in there about the Masons, and the earliest
Right.
Masons were stonemasons, and it became kind of a more of a guild, I think, kind of thing. But it goes back to the foundation was, Hiram
Hieroglyph.
yeah, he was Phoenician.
Yeah.
Hiram Atir, the Phoenician city, sent Hiram Abiff down to. And that thing is, they don't even know if that temple exists archaeologically, but in the Bible, the Solomon's Temple was built by a Phoenician.
Okay. Wow.
Hiram Abiff was
Yeah.
a Phoenician. He was at the Phoenician coast, so. And that's so cool, so if the Phoenicians, they probably had that tradition, members of them that were Masons,
Right.
It goes way back to then. I don't know, maybe it goes back to the, the
Well, even
Egyptian
George
side.
Washington was a Mason, and
Franklin was too, I think.
yeah, a lot of them were actually.
Marquis de Lafayette, I think, was a Mason too.
Lafayette, yeah.
He's, if United States, you always say Fayetteville and Lafayette, and Mount Lafayette, and there's Lafayette Square down in Haverhill. That's all named after him, the 19-year-old general. He came through here when he was much older in 1824. He went to the Patty Tavern. He stayed at the Patty Tavern.
Oh, yeah.
Same Patties here, but the cousins. And there's a beautiful barn there. The house burnt down, I think, in the 60s. And before that happened, it was like a gift shop. I think they had a little bit of a restaurant, and they had like trampolines in the 60s. And
Right.
somebody got in there with a knife. But anyway, Marquis de Lafayette was on his way from up through Mass, up through 28, I believe, to Salem, stayed there, and then the next day he was supposed to go to the Dairies Girls' School, and the girls were all giddy for him. It was just like a superstar. Now, he probably was in his 70s at the time, you know, because it was 1824. And in 1776, which is, what, 50 years before that almost, he was 19. So he's getting up there in age, but they were still like, he was like a rock star.
He was a rock star, yeah.
Yeah, an old rock star.
That's
Well,
cool.
actually, our rock stars are 70 years old, aren't they? Mick Jagger?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
Like that. And he's still, like Mick Jagger, he brings people like
Right.
huge crowds. Paul McCartney. I can't
That's
believe
what it was back then.
It was,
Everybody
yeah.
was like, they looked up to people that were explorers, scientists, just
People really did something
philosophers.
really
Right. That
improved our life.
Now they look up to clowns.
Yeah,
pretty much.
clowns. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's some athletes that are nice, and a lot of the athletes are not. You know, they're
Yeah.
not worth looking at. You know,
Right.
and they're like gods to these people.
Right, yeah,
Some
exactly.
athletes are really honorable, and others I'm like,
Yeah.
they're very wealthy, but you don't do a damn thing.
Yeah,
You
like
take drugs,
Hernandez,
and
yeah.
you're in jail all the time too.
Right.
Yeah, Hernandez, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, really. What they, you know,
Yeah,
it's not a
too
good
bad.
one.
You know, generation looks
Alan
up to people
Shepard,
like
you know,
that.
I
now.
always, you know, he's from my hometown, you know,
Yeah.
Alan Shepard. But my aunt used to do his hair. My cousin's got a thing from Alan Shepard too, and he used to, we think, played up here, back, because they're from Derry, East Derry, right up here on Big Island Pond is an island named after this famous Native American named Chief Escambuet, and and he was brought to Versailles by King Louis XIV and given a silver sword. He was given a sword. He was given a pension of silver for the rest of his life, and he was taken around France because of Versailles too. And he had fought the English from Newfoundland all the way down to New York, I guess. But he actually was from near Conway, New Hampshire, you know, up in that beautiful Mount Washington Valley,
Yep.
near Freiburg, Maine area. But eventually he ended up down here on this island because he had actually, he'd find a silver mine somewhere when he went on his vision quest when he was a youth, and he went back to look for it later. His brother-in-law, so his wife's brother, and another Indian chief were trying to spy on him. He ended up killing the Indian chief, the war chief's son, and his brother-in-law was wounded, crawled out of the woods and reported what happened, and he was kind of excommunicated. He ended up down here in Big Island Point, and that's where Alan Shepard's family still has a place today. And Al Kayworth, the writer, in the book in there called The Escambuet Warrior, I think it's called.
Right.
Anyway, they came up here, we think, and they played up here like a lot of the kids from Big Island Pond came up here. Al Kayworth did, and Al Kayworth met Alan Shepard when they were both kids doing canoe rocking contest on the lake down there.
Wow.
And Al Shepard wrote in 1998, before he died, he wrote on the back of the book the whole little paragraph about how Chief Escambuet inspired him as a youth, probably led to him being like the first astronaut and walking on the moon and stuff. It was a real big inspiration for him. So there's a lot of neat history. But Alan Shepard's, it's Alan B. Shepard, Alan Bartlett Shepard. His father was Bartlett Shepard. His father's mother's side, it was the Bartletts, and the Bartletts are Josiah Bartlett, which is played by Martin Sheen on The West Wing, which is the New Hampshire governor.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the real Josiah Bartlett was in the late 1700s or 18. He was the second signer of the Declaration of Independence,
Wow.
right after John Hancock.
No way.
So that's kind of close.
Yeah, it
Alan
is.
Shepard's. So it's kind of cool. Alan Shepard's ancestor was one of the signers of the Declaration.
Yeah.
So it's like a small world. And on that same lake up there is Whitney's Cove, and this guy Whitney, back in the 30s, built this cool boat to go in the lake. He built an airboat. He did all these kind of inventions. And in World War II, I think he did some cool stuff. Anyway, his uncle was of Pratt and Whitney Aircraft, and he used to spend time down there. And the other cousin was Eli Whitney, the cotton gin.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Whitney Ball and Chain out of down in Bridgeport, Connecticut, was down in Bridgeport, which I used to fly into all the time. We haven't done that since about over 20 years ago, and my company got changed its whole thing. But anyway, we got bought by American eventually. But anyway, so that Whitney, I used to go by Whitney's Cove, and it was meaningless. I went to school with Whitney's. I don't know if they're related to them, but actually, it's a very famous family, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot of inventors in there. So
Right.
there's a lot of history that kind of ties into other things
yeah.
like that. So kind of surrounded by it all over New England, and they're all around here, you know, like some
Right.
cool stuff. And even the Whitneys down in Bridgeport, Connecticut, were all tied in together. It's like the
really,
same
yeah.
kind of cool stuff like that. But that's why I kind of like history. You know, we taught in school, they don't make it interesting with the crap.
Right.
You know, but
Like I looked up something about Anne Hutchinson, who was wasn't she kidnapped by the Indians?
well, there's a Hannah Dustin.
Dustin.
Hannah Dustin, and she was kidnapped, brought up to Concord, and she with another young person that was kidnapped,
Yeah.
helped fight it, killed all the Indians at night.
Right.
Now she's related to the Dustins, and the Dustins were related to the Patty family. And over here we have this land here, which was Patty's, and over down the road here is the Dustin. It's like 100 and something acres. It's a Dustin's lot.
Mm-hmm.
The Dustins are still around.
Wow.
That's Hannah Dustin, and they have a big statue of her. You know.
Really?
probably some real politically correct people might say she killed the Indians. I got Indian in me too, you know.
Yeah,
but what happened
yeah.
is she got kidnapped and she was fighting for her life, you know.
Right.
And she did what she could do. I think in any situation, the person that would say I would never do that, put yourself in that position. I don't want to kill anybody,
Exactly.
but I may have,
But
you
you
know,
may have to
you
protect
might have to.
yourself.
It's like I don't want to do this. Every part of my body, but I'm going to have to do it.
Right.
Got to do
you
it.
Got to
you know?
protect yourself.
Got to protect
Absolutely.
yourself. And they kidnapped her and brought her to Concord, and I think they're going to probably scalp her, whatever they're going to do to her,
Yep.
you know, make a slave, scalp her, or whatever,
Right.
and the young boy. So they both. But that was Hannah
Yeah.
Dustin. There may have been some other ones like that, but that's the
Yeah.
one that's famous, and the
Well-
Patty family was related to that.
Well, Anne Hutchinson was one of the first women that came with Roger Williams to settle in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then
Oh, okay,
when
yeah.
Massachusetts, I think, was they wanted Rhode Island together. You know,
Oh, they wanted the whole thing.
they wanted the whole
They
thing.
didn't want Rhode Island separate. Oh, okay,
Right,
gotcha.
right.
Yeah,
And so she fled to New York, I think, to what is now the Bronx. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm trying to remember the whole story, but the Indians out there tried to kidnap her. I think the story goes, her baby, she gave her baby to somebody to take care of it.
yeah.
And they fled back to Massachusetts. And that baby, long story short, it's Mitt Romney's great
Oh. Mitt Romney, really?
Yeah.
Because it's funny, because weren't they from Michigan, but maybe they had roots here originally too? Is
I
that-
think
in
they
this
were
area?
from, I thought it was New York. I thought that's,
I'm trying to remember,
I could
yeah,
be
I'm trying to remember Mitt Romney. I know his father was big in Michigan for the
Yeah.
governor, and then he ran for president. But really, is there a relationship between Mitt Romney
Romney and Anne Hutchinson. Yeah.
Well, she's like a Hannah Dustin kind of person, I guess. Did she actually, she escaped, though? She escaped like Hannah
she
Dustin
did, yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a similar kind of story. That's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
I would mix those two up pretty quickly. I
Yeah,
think,
right, yeah, it's very
Except one's
close.
down in Rhode Island, and one is up here, right down the street here.
Right,
In other
yep.
ways, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool.
So-
yeah. Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those things. It's like Mitt Romney's related to this person who's, you know, hundreds
Related
and
to
hundreds
this
of years
one.
ago.
Yeah,
It's famous.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, weird,
Yeah,
huh?
it is. It
Their
is.
life is funny like that. It's kind of neat.
It
But
is.
in history, you know, in school, you know, here's a date of 1620, 1776.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
very cut and dry, and you know.
Remember these dates. Remember these names.
Right.
They're almost meaningless, but then you read these are real people. These things really happen, just like
Yep.
what's happening right now.
Right, exactly.
And it's a real story. It
It
really
is.
happened. It's
Yep.
cool, yeah.
It's-
But to be able to put that into, you know, so people can see that.
Right.
I suppose for some teachers it's difficult, or the school books would be difficult like that. Because I found history kind of boring in school, and then I got into
I did too. It was after school when I
Get
actually
into
started, you
a
know,
lot of people like that. That's
finding
neat.
these places, coming to places like this.
Yeah.
You know, that's
in this
you
sort
just
of
find out
stuff.
so much. It connects.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah, thank you for
You know?
that. You know, we tried.
Yeah.
You know, we tried, and we have about 7,000 school kids come.